You just came from our induction ceremonies. What are your thoughts?
I love the ceremony. I was blown away by some of the speeches for sure, but it just was a room where you could feel the love and respect and just the energy of the women being supported. You could just feel that in the air.
Mm-hmm. And I know you have had a lot of honors and awards, and I guess, how is this different for you? Is it different for you?
It's very different for me, and it's really it's one of the like top 3 things in my career. This being in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame, I mean, in the museum, part of the history of some of the most amazing women that have shaped the West. You know, reading about it, when I found out about the honor, I learned so much and was like trying to figure out where I fit in. And so I was really going back through some of the inductees and understanding that it's all about how you use your platform. And you know, there's cowgirls of all kinds, and I realized that, and I love that there's all kinds of women that do all kinds of different things that are being celebrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a good point. We've got, you know, women who are writers, like writing, not horse riding. We've got you know, people who are in the business of horse. We've got all different kinds. And someone came up to me after the ceremony and said, "Why did she say that she wasn't a cowgirl?" In your acceptance speech,
yeah.
You said, "You're learning, but you clearly are." I mean, you've got, you know, the ethos, and you give back, and, you know, you're independent. You're just all those things.
Well, I guess when you think about what a cowgirl is, you know, I'm picturing like what I wanted to be when I went to the rodeos and saw the girls flying by on their horses with sequins and fringe.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be that. And I still want to be that when I grow up. Working on it, but yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it in the context of you know, doing what some of these other women do with amazing things with horses, and I realized like you know, there's artists, there's painters, there's poets, there's philanthropists, there's, you know, Eleanor Green, who there's not long enough to list all the things she's done. So I feel like it's showing little girls and young women like a cowgirl is just a mentality that you have. It's not about physical ability or boots and spurs at all, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You strike me just in talking with you and in hearing your acceptance speech and also your songs as being very relatable. I'm sure you've heard that before. My own relatable moment was I was in the grocery store years ago and Baggage Claim came on. And that was my life.
Was it? Well, dang it.
It was Baggage Claim.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
But what makes you so relatable, do you think?
I think I take from the school of Loretta Lynn, who said, "Go live a life so you have something to write about." And I figure if, you know, my life has all these ups and downs, good or bad and ugly, I use it in my songs, and I feel like it's other people's life too. You know what I mean? It's like, whether it's a story song, A House That Built Me, or a Baggage Claim, or burning someone's house down, whatever it is, I feel like it's really based on real emotions. That's the place that I write from.
Yeah. Oh, it's so very relatable. Plus, I feel like you say things that either, you know, we wish we could say and we don't, because maybe particularly for women or even Southern women, you know, you're raised a certain way, like Mama's Broken Heart, I guess, comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you just put it out there.
I just have really based my entire career and life really on telling the truth and just being who I am. Like, I don't ever, whatever I think and feel is usually on my face or coming out of my mouth. Like, you know where I stand. And I feel like that's the kind of people that I'm drawn to. And that's kind of who my mom raised me to be. My parents both, but especially my mom. Just, you know, her first piece of advice when I was starting out at 16, 17, dabbling and going, do I want to chase music for life? And when she saw that I was really going to chase it, she just said, know who you are and stick with it. Don't let anyone sway who you are at the core, and always listen to your gut. And that's what I've gone on for 20 years now.
Yeah. So you were raised in Texas, Lindale?
Yeah,
right?
I was born in Longview, Texas, raised in Lindale.
Okay, and so do you think, or how did being raised in, I mean, I'd call that a small town, I guess, population for, yeah. So an influence then?
Yeah, I mean, Lindale's like the quintessential Friday Night Lights, small town football, every Sunday morning church never missed. And it gave me a really strong foundation. I had a really pretty normal small town East Texas childhood. Though my parents had very interesting careers. They were private investigators, so I saw a lot of the world. But in our little world, it was pretty safe and sheltered. But I'm glad I got to see kind of both sides of that coin. Like, I got to hear some stories, see things normal, kids wouldn't or shouldn't probably, but it was just my parents' work. But in our house, it was like church every Sunday, cookies after school. Like, we had a kind of a good balance of knowing who we were and where we fit in the world, my brother and I. And I think having that small town like core really has kept me grounded through all the things I've gone on to do in my adult life.
Yeah. So speaking of your parents, so yes, they were detectives, but then they lost everything, or they fell on hard times during the oil bust. Is that right? And
Yeah.
How old were you, and what was that like?
It was the oil bust, and it was, my parents were doing a lot of child custody work, and people just didn't have money to pay them to, do their jobs, and they're self-employed. So we lost everything. We were homeless, and we moved in with my uncle in East Texas, and that's why I think that we talked about earlier, the house that built me, like, that song, I was like, I didn't write that song, but it's one of those things where you're like, how did they know my life? And I think so many people feel that because there's always that nostalgia attached to a song like that where it really takes you back to your core.
Oh, for sure. How old were you when that happened?
I was 5 years old when we and it happened quick, when you're self-employed. It was a mom and pop operation, and they were doing great, but when hard times come and you're self-employed, it kind of just, the bottom falls out. And I was very aware, though. It's funny how you can be a tiny person, but you still feel really big, and I remember all those emotions, and I think that's also what put the work ethic in me that I have now, is to make sure that I could take care of myself and my family.
Yeah. And then they also went on to form a ministry, maybe is not the right word, with domestic abuse survivors?
My parents started taking in victims of domestic abuse and violence, basically moms and children. So pretty much my whole junior high and high school, I shared a room with people that were needing some shelter from a bad situation. And, again, that was a really safe, comfortable home we lived in, but there were some really ugly things that I was exposed to because of having these women and their kids, sharing a room with a daughter who just ran away with her mom trying to get out of a horrible situation. And I think that also has played a huge part in my understanding of how strong and resilient women can be, and also played a part in my songwriting.
Yeah, for sure. I think you can see that in some of your lyrics, like Gunpowder and Lead.
Yeah,
maybe?
for sure.
Yeah,
Gunpowder and Lead.
yeah.
It was I actually wrote that song with a girl named Heather Little, who was a survivor of domestic violence. So it's pretty powerful to, I wrote that song at 18, but I hadn't lived through it myself, thank the Lord, but I had really seen it up close and personal.
Yeah. So when you were young and you were living through that, were you ever resentful, like, how come they have to be here and why is this here? Or did you get it at that young age? Were you like, no, I understand, this is a good thing that we're doing?
It was. I mean, it was a lot at some points. There was 2 or 3 families living with us at once. But I also knew that, like, my mom and dad had been called to do that, and they were just doing what they were called to do, and it was doing something that was really bettering some people's lives. And my brother and I got to observe that and soak that in, and it became part of our core values of, like, take care of people, do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so much about getting back to the honorees and who we are. A lot of the women that we honor is just right in there. Would you say that your parents were strict, or?
My parents weren't strict, but they were detectives, so you weren't getting away with anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was don't even try. I think my brother had a little more leniency because my dad went on the road with me, and so Luke was in high school with mom, and she's a little more fun, and so she,
okay,
I think he had a little more fun.
He's
5 years younger, but Yeah, I just didn't even try. I was like, I know what's going to happen, and I don't want that wrath.
That's funny. What was it like traveling with your dad? And I guess, was he your manager at that point then?
My dad was just out because I was really young. I mean, I got my first house gig at the Rio Palm Isle Club in Longview at 17, and I couldn't even really get in. And so my parents had to go with me for the first, like, 3 weekends till I turned 18. But he just kind of went to sell merch, number one, and to kind of watch me. I mean, I had not really found my footing yet. I had random tour managers and stuff, but I was like, I get it. He didn't want to just send his baby girl out to the world with like, well, you're on your own. So, but there came a time where like I'd really got settled into who I was, and I'm like 24, and I'm like, Dad, we're good. I kind of want to do like 24-year-old girl stuff. Can you just go home? You know, he got the hint.
Yeah. All right. I read in I think it was an NPR interview in 2019, that when you were younger, and I guess your mom was acting as a booking agent, maybe?
Yeah, she was all of it.
Okay. That the Texas music scene was not always a place for girls. And I'm just kind of comparing that to the industry of Western museums. And so for us, in our world, it's very much a boys' club. The entire history of the West is very much this male mythic, how the West was won. And it's really frustrating. And so, you know, it's a struggle to always insert ourselves into the narrative. And so I'm wondering, taking off of this, you know, Texas music scene was not always a place for girls, have you or did you encounter similar obstacles in your career?
Absolutely. It's a man's world, like you said, with what y'all are doing, which I'm so thankful you guys are doing what you're doing for women and drawing such attention to some of these women that are part of this shrine here are like life-changing, really made a huge difference in the world. And so they deserve to have a light shed on them. But I think in the music business, same thing. I mean, it's, you know, my management is all females run. It's me and my manager, Marianne. And before that, it was my mama. And she was the one calling every bar owner in Texas saying, can my daughter play some songs? And it was pretty much no 99% of the time, because there's a whole Texas music scene, and it pretty much has always been dominated by males, even from the Willie and Waylon days. You know, Jesse Coulter snuck in there, but there was really not a lot of females on the scene, especially down there, and they would just always say girls don't really draw. So I ended up just kind of boots on the ground. Like, I would go to shows of people I liked and have my guitar and ask the bar owner if I could sing at set change, or they'd be like, oh, you can get up there and do 2 or 3 or whatever. And I just would play and sing anywhere I could, anytime I could. And the more I had to learn to sing over clanking beer bottles and bar fights and louder jukebox music and pool games and football games on TV, the more it like put a fire in me of like, I'm going to get their attention, and it's going to take a long time. But I was there for it. And, you know, I'm still doing that now.
Is it still, because, you know, we, outside of the music industry, we hear about how dicey the recording industry is, and is it a situation where as a female you have to fight harder for getting the same things that the men do?
Yeah, I mean, in country music, you know, there's still that big, it's closing in little by little, but there's still that big gap of, we just have to work harder. Women just have to work harder, whether it's radio or whether it's putting on our show clothes. I mean, I would love to throw on a dirty ball cap and a white t-shirt and go on stage. That'd be great. But I got Spanx and heels and all kind of layers. You know what I mean? It's just, we have to do a lot more, and we have to really be strong in it. And, you know, I don't know if you'll have to bleep this, but one of my favorite quotes is, knowing what you want does not make you a bitch. And I feel like that is kind of what we go by as far as like all the people in my camp, band crew, management, my parents who do my merch and all that stuff. Like, we just kind of go, this is who we are, this is what we want, and we're going to get it, even if it takes a little more time and a lot more effort. Yeah, absolutely. There's that reminds me of that quote, well-behaved women rarely make history.
Yes, rarely make history. And that's so true.
Yeah.
I guess things that give me hope are, and it just hit me when I was looking at the pre-show reel, and we had a Patsy Montana, I'm assuming that still made it in, yes. We had a Patsy Montana, who's in our Hall of Fame, by the way, And I think we had her record, I Want to Be a Cowboy Sweetheart, right, from 1935. But I'm thinking it was just such a change, I guess, in point of view to your song, If I Was a Cowboy, I'd Be the Queen. You know, it's just such a turning that whole genre on its head, from a gal singing about I'd love to be a cowboy sweetheart to, nah, I think I want to be the
actual cowboy.
actual cowboy. Yeah.
I feel like that too, and that's an interesting reference, but it makes so much sense. And I think I noticed a lot of the speeches today included I wanted to be a cowboy when I grew up. And I was like, don't we all? Like, but here we are in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame getting inducted, so we basically are the cowboys, you know? And I feel like that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, a really powerful thing. I agree. Do you have a preference of songwriting over singing, and does one come easier for you?
I think it's both. I mean, I think after 20 years on tour, I love to tour, but I also realize that I love to miss it. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful job, and it's literally living my dream, but it's also grueling after a long time. And so finding balance has been a real important thing to me in the last few years, especially after 2020, getting to be home, or having to be, whichever way you put it, for the longest amount of time I'd ever been home or off work in my life, my whole adult life. It made me realize I do love what I do so much, but not having to do it all the time and just pound my head against the pavement, you know, is makes me miss it and love it that much more. And so I also get to focus a lot more on building out the brands we've started to build, and songwriting. You know, it's hard these days. I used to could get on the bus and write 3 songs and go do 200 shows a year, you know,
Yeah.
and I just now kind of separate the two and really give my all to the tour time, and then when I'm off tour, give my all to the songwriting time, and then my charity, of course, I spend time on. So, but I love both.
Yeah. So to recharge, then you just kind of go away and, you know, you're just at home and...
I have a farm an hour from Nashville, or I'm in Texas a lot too. I come home a lot, but I have a farm an hour from Nashville, and it's my recharge my batteries place, and it's the place where I found now in my 30s, I'm the most me there.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely am a performer, and I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm Miranda Lambert. I have that, but I found that taking all that down and just being around my horses and dogs and having some quiet and walking on a gravel road, it really refills my tank and it centers me.
Yeah. That almost makes it sound like you're kind of an introvert.
I'm definitely an introvert with an extroverted job.
Okay. I can relate. Okay. So we've got a magnet at the museum that says girls compete with one another, but women empower each other. And I think that you have done that. And it reminds me of another one of our honorees, Annie Oakley. And she paid for, with her earnings, the education of something like a dozen girls, because Annie herself she didn't have the opportunity to get educated, didn't have the money. So she paid it forward for other women to do it. Some women who she didn't know, she just heard about. So can you tell me, you're doing something similar, I think. Can you tell me what inspired you to create at Belmont University the Women's Creators Scholarship?
Well, I was presented with the opportunity, and it was an instant yes. It was about getting these young singer-songwriters, or women in the music industry in general, but especially singer-songwriters, sort of a launching pad and a place of hope. I mean, there's a reason they call us starving artists. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
And so, being able to be part of somebody that's 18, 19 years old, their beginning of their journey, if I can help in any way, I would have loved to have that for my own journey. And so I think it's really important. And I've really made a point to take out, I've done several separate tours. It's been all women. We call it Roadside Bars, Pink Guitars. We've done it several times. And, take it out, up and coming female artists. I have a side band that's my passion project that's called Pistol Annies. That's 2 of my favorite singer-songwriters and best friends are in. And I just think it's good to inspire each other. I want that fire. I want somebody to make me go, oh, I got to get better, and whether that's a brand new songwriter, a song I just heard, or one of my peers or whatever it is. I just want to surround myself with people better than me so I can keep working harder.
Yeah, it's the iron sharpens iron
Yes.
kind of thing. Let's talk about animals. Tell me about your involvement with the Gypsy Vanner horses and your horse, Gibson.
Gibson. I wanted to be a cowgirl. I'm going to be a cowboy when I grow up.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a horse. I grew up on a farm, but I didn't ever have a horse. And so, like every little girl's dream, I want a pony. At 29, I had met a couple of people when I was living in Oklahoma that were really big into quarter horses, and I was like, I'm doing this. I can learn to do this. And so I didn't really get in the saddle till I was 30. I mean, for the first time ever, really, which would have been a lot easier at 3, where you have no fear.
Yes,
yes. But I got a Gypsy Vanner named Sophie for my 30th birthday, and she was green and I was green. And so I was like, what am I going to do with this beautiful creature animal that I have no idea? Because my other quarter horse I had been working on was very seasoned, so I didn't really have to try. And so I started taking English lessons. Like, I started January 1st. I remember it was freezing, and I'm like, this is what a cowgirl will do. Just got to go do it. You signed up.
That's right.
And I've been riding ever since, and I love it. I started showing. I got a few more Vanners and a Welsh Cob, and I started showing, and I obviously do it for fun. I mean, I do it for the ribbons, but I don't care what color. I'll take last place. But I just love it so much, and it's something that it reminds me of my kind of my career a little bit, what I chose to do, because every time I step on the stage, it's a different experience, it's a different audience, it's a different group of people that will never be in that room again. It's a one-of-a-kind experience every single time you step on stage, and that's exactly how it is when you sit in the saddle. And so I think that same feeling is why I'm so attracted to horses and want to learn about them, and they teach you so much more about yourself than you ever could.
That's so true. That's so true. They say that once you learn to write English, you can write anything.
That's why I started taking English lessons, because I was like, I had an old cowboy that was a trainer who was pretty grumpy, kind of told me, I took Sophie down to his ranch, and I was in South Texas, and I was like, can you help me? Because she had come from this ranch, and I was like, I just don't know what to do. And he saw me ride and was like, you need to go find English lessons, like start there. And so here I am at 30 years old, like Googling English lessons. Like, okay, here we go. So, but I really enjoyed it. I've kind of gone through a journey of dressage, English, Western. I mean, I've kind of run the gamut, but I'm not great at any of it. I'm not even good at any of it, but I love it so much, and I feel like, it's one of those things I'll never master, and that's the draw.
Yeah, there's a challenge. Mm-hmm. With the English saddles, there's just not as much stuff to hang on to.
No, there's not nothing to hang on to. I have fallen off several times. So that part of the cowgirl, I've got that down. Fall off, get back on. Done that a lot.
For that. Well, we've got an honoree. I can't remember who it was. But didn't start riding till she was like 50-something.
Oh,
and
that makes sense.
she went on to win championships and eventually get onto our Hall of Fame. So, yeah, you're way young.
It's just
then.
There's a little more fear and it hurts a little worse. That's all.
This is true. This is true. Let's talk about Mutt Nation just a little bit. Did you have a shelter animal growing up?
I had stray dogs because we lived in the country in rural East Texas. So people would just see that we had dogs and like dump them in our yard. You know how it goes in the country. And so I just always had random stray dogs everywhere. And we did rescue a few more from like families that were rehoming and all that stuff. But the first shelter dog I ever got was named Delilah. And I was volunteering at the East Texas Humane Society. And I was about to go on tour for the first time, and I was scared, and I was like, never had a little dog, and I fell in love with this little dog, and so I got me a tour dog, and she rode on the bus with me for like 5 years, and then as she got older, she got tired. Now I get it. Yeah. I was like, you're rolling, Delilah. Yeah. So she went and lived with my grandma, but that's what started the ball rolling for Mutt Nation was her, because it was like, man, people just don't know how amazing so many of these shelter animals are, and they think they're scary places. They think shelters are these scary places with chain link and dogs barking, and it's like there's some of the most amazing friends that you never knew you needed there if you're just willing to give it a chance. And, you know, adopt, don't shop is obviously my number one message, and spay neuter is important to my nation. But definitely, you know, when it was time to pick a charity for like when I was finally getting a name for myself and had a platform, it was like no brainer for me. For sure, rescue animals.
Not a rescue animal, but Luca's story today was unbelievable.
I don't know. I wish they wouldn't have opened with Luca's story, because I cried from then till I just stopped crying a while ago. I just kept on crying all day.
It hit you right in the feels, that little dog, my gosh. Ever since we got your nomination file, we began doing our own research, which I know sounds weird for someone who's in, you know, the public eye, and, you know, but we have to. But I ran across an article called 21 Reasons Why Miranda Lambert is a Seriously Badass Role Model.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, mothers. I did not sign up to be a role model. Little girls, don't do as I do.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you think of yourself that way as a role model?
I don't. I mean, I guess I don't do and I don't. I mean, I didn't sign up to, like, I mean, I've got tattoos. I cuss like a sailor. And a lot of my songs burn houses down, kill abusive husbands, all that kind of stuff. Because it's real and relatable, because it's real life. And so in that way, I feel like, you know, I don't know that I'm like your squeaky clean, you know, shining example of what a daughter should be or whatever, or a woman, but I do know that my honesty is something that I hope people would strive for as well. You know, it's like, just be who you are and tell the truth, and don't be afraid to show the flaws. You know, like, when it's not a sweep under the rug situation with me. It's like, oh, here it is. I'm surprised. I'm human. I'm imperfect, and I'll write songs about it. And I feel like if, in that way, you know, I do have a lot of people say, you know, now I have moms bringing their daughters to my shows where they were my age when I started, and now their daughters and sometimes granddaughters. Like, sometimes it's 3 generation. I'll see them at the meet and greets or whatever, and it really means a lot to me, because that means I kind of hit all the points of, like, the different stages of becoming a woman.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some of the things that this person listed for all the reasons that you are a seriously badass role model: you have a sense of humor, you collaborate with and lift other women up, you have a heart for animals, you've created all these other business ventures, you keep it real, you're authentic, your award clothes are always on point. But those are all, you know, those are all things that I think we too look for in our honorees: your strength and your openness and your ability to look squarely at yourself or at relationships, good or bad, and just lay it out there. And I'm sure sometimes that's a really vulnerable act, you know, to do, not to mention your talent. But, you know, I think you are definitely a role model, and that's why I wanted to bring that up, because one of the reasons that we're so glad that you're here and now in our Hall of Fame is now when young girls come in here, you know, we can point to, you know, you, and you can be someone that they can look up to.
Well, and I appreciate you saying all that, and I also know that when I come here and I look at the walls and the photos, and I'm part of this ceremony, and I hope it's not my last, because I loved it. Just come visit and watch other people's amazing journey. But I feel like that I am that little girl still too. Like, being here put so much fire, like, in me again, to keep being bolder and bigger and keep stretching it and keep pushing it. And, you know, I think that that's what this whole thing that you guys are doing is for, whether it's for a 6-year-old girl that just got her first pony, or for me, who's had a journey of my own but still have so much more ahead of me. These other women sort of showed us the trail that we can keep blazing. You know, it can go until the day you die, and that's the plan. You know, and I love that these women can do that for me, and that I can be part of doing it for someone else.
Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you.